Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. If you're with us today, why don't you give us a quick good morning, a hi, or something in that chat box. Let us know that you're out there. Good morning, Jackie.
Familiar face.
Yeah, good morning, Jemima.
Morning. Ooh, North Bay.
Lisa from North Bay. Nice.
Good morning.
All right.
Good morning, Kathy. I saw your name on the Summer Wellness Challenge. Nice to see you.
I'm not sure where everyone is exactly right now, but here in Borden and Barrie area, it's a beautiful morning out there. It's hard to be inside. But thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we're hoping to give you some good information this morning.
Yeah. I was this morning, I was prepping for this and I was on my deck overlooking the water. Ottawa, Calgary.
That's amazing. Welcome, everybody.
All right, we will get started. And then if there's any last minute stragglers, maybe getting coffee right now, they can join in while we've started. So good morning, everyone. My name is Braden Lasecki. I'm a health promotion specialist from CFB Borden. Alongside with me today, I guess that way, is Jessica Hood, who is our health promotion manager at CFB Borden. So we'll be taking you through, this is part 2 of our 3-part series of healthy lifestyles. So this week we are focusing on mental health throughout your life. Last week we focused a little bit more on the nutrition aspect. And next week we'll be talking about physical activity and how that kind of changes throughout our life cycle. So today we'll be talking more about that mental health side, very important as we kind of go through life and different stages in our life, the importance of healthy mental health and looking at it and practicing different ways to kind of cope with things, stressors that are happening. So that's kind of what we'll be talking about today. As we go through the content, please feel free, use the chat box. If you want to come on and actually talk to us, just let us know in the chat box and we can kind of enable your microphone and video if you want. With that said, we're talking from a preventative view. So as health promotion specialists, we more talk about how we can prevent a negative health outcome, such as going down that mental health continuum and having those mental health concerns. So we're talking about ways to prevent that. So absolutely ask questions as needed. We might not know all the answers to every question you have. That might be more suited for a physician or a mental health professional. But we'll do our best and kind of guide you through that if need be. As well, today we are talking about some topics that are kind of maybe have happened to you in the past or maybe you're going through right now. So just be mindful of that. If you need to take a minute throughout this presentation, you can mute us, you can leave if you want, jump back in. Just let us know you're okay. If you do leave, kind of come back in and say, I just need a minute or whatever it might be. Or if you want, you can contact us afterwards at bordenhealthpromotion@gmail.com, just so we know you're okay and all good. But yeah, there are some trigger warnings throughout the presentation I'll be kind of addressing, just some topics that we might discuss that might bring up some information from the past or present. All right. So before we get started into the actual presentation, there's a few kind of overarching guidelines we have to follow from the national platform. So for the purpose of today's presentation, all of the content you're seeing is part of DND and can't really be replicated in any way. The slides and the recording of this presentation will be available afterwards on YouTube, the CFMWS YouTube channel. So you can view that at any time, no need to kind of videotape us now or whatever you might be doing. Stop. And then there's some topics that might be appropriate for a certain age group. So generally speaking, our content is for 18 plus. So be mindful of that with those around you in the room, maybe in your household. Maybe throw in some earplugs or earphones, I guess, not earplugs, or whatever. Go to a different room. Just kind of parental discretion. And then be mindful that this is being recorded, so anything you say in the chat or anything you want to come on camera, just be mindful of that. And be mindful that whatever people are sharing throughout today is their story, their perspective, and it's no need to kind of discuss afterwards or anything like that. All right, so today's presentation, kind of the outline, we're going to be talking about generally what is mental health. We often hear a lot about it, you know, Bella's talk, mental health is there, we're always talking about it more and more, but what really is it? So we'll be digging into that a bit. And then we'll be talking about kind of some positive mental health for all ages. So generally speaking, how can we better our mental health? What are kind of those pillars of mental health that we need to kind of hit to have that positive mental health for any age? And then the last section of the day, where we'll spend probably about half the hour, I guess, we'll be talking about considerations for varying ages in terms of our mental health. So, you know, between the ages of children to young adults, what are some common stressors in that age group? What should we be hitting on in terms of that positive mental health aspect? And then we'll be discussing some resources available to you kind of in that age demographic. And we'll be taking you through 4 segments. So young children to teens, and then young adults, and then midlife, and then older adults. So kind of taking you through the varying ages of mental health and what we can be doing in those stages. Alrighty, so what is mental health? We hear it all the time. I feel like more and more, which is fantastic. We're talking about mental health. We're talking about what it is. Amazing that we're doing that, kind of brushing off that stigma a little bit. But what is mental health? So I want to hear from you in the chat. What comes to mind when you think of mental health? Maybe if you hear about it in the news or if we're talking right now, what's the first thing that kind of comes to mind? Hope everyone's awake. So yeah, Jeremiah says stress. Absolutely. Stress plays a huge role in our mental health. We'll talk about that. A state of mind when dealing with issues and stress. Absolutely. So kind of that perspective within ourselves of how we can deal with stress or what's going on in our lives. Absolutely. Anyone else? So yeah, we kind of hit the nail on the head there of, you know, stress plays a huge role in our mental health, and kind of how we deal with stress will play a huge role into how we are dealing with our mental health. I see anxiety, ABSD, and depression. Absolutely, those are kind of some mental health illnesses or concerns. We'll talk about kind of the difference between those and mental health in a minute. But mental health is kind of that state of well-being. So we all have mental health, whereas we might not all have mental health illnesses. Some of us do. I think the percentage right now is 1 in 5 Canadians will be living with some kind of mental health illness or condition. But with that said, we all have to think of our mental health. We all have mental health. It's just like physical health in that we have to practice it daily, hourly maybe. And how we manage that plays a huge role in our mental health success or our positive mental health. And just like physical health, it's not just about surviving our mental health. So we can't just learn about it once and forget it. It's about that thriving aspect. So constantly working on it, managing our highs and lows throughout our life, practicing new ways or learning new ways to deal with our mental health. So it's not just one and done, it's a constant kind of learning process that we have to address. And it's not just simply the illness or not simply the absence of illness that we're looking at, it's kind of everything encompassing our mental health.
Get into the mental fitness piece, could we do a quick poll and just see who we have on the line in terms of, are they CAP members, are they D&D?
Oh, good idea. And I should have done that. You're right.
No, I just thought maybe it would be a good idea for us to kind of gear the presentation. There we go. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Great mix today.
You're right. This
That's
is a good mix. So we've got about 57% serving members, veterans, and then civilian employees. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that is helpful. That will be helpful later on when we kind of discuss our potential stressors in our life and where we're at with that. Yeah. All right. So when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about a state of well-being in which an individual is psychologically and emotionally resilient. So we talk about resiliency a lot, or resiliency skills a lot throughout the presentation today. Really, really important for our overall mental health. When I like to think of mental health, I like to think of ways in which we can live and move forward and grow. So we know that we're going to address stress in our lives, or have stress in our lives at some point, probably daily for a lot of us. But how we cope with those situations and how we learn from those situations is really what our mental health or mental fitness is about. So in saying that, it's also about resilience. So if I go through a struggle or a hard time, and I learn and move forward from that and have a positive outlook from that experience, that's kind of our resiliency skills. So resiliency also, or good mental health also includes a sense of purpose in life. So we feel like we're contributing to something greater than ourselves. We're positively contributing to maybe our social relationships or work life, maybe contributing to our work, our family perhaps. And then it's also about strong relationships. So social support is huge when we're talking about mental fitness or mental health. Is that you? Oh. So strong relationships, very important. So that support network that kind of grounds you in your mental health. That can be people to turn to, or people that are there for you during hard times, or just having that positive social interaction is huge for our overall mental health. And we'll kind of talk about that later on as we talk about maybe children and that kind of importance of kind of sharing that strong relationship and having that strong relationship. And then the next thing that includes in positive mental health or good mental health is feeling connected to others. So we're feeling like we have those connections, we can contribute to their overall well-being as well as ours, and that kind of coexisting together. And then having a good sense of self. So good sense of self being, we're positive, we have a positive outlook on life, we know who we are maybe, or we have a good self love or something like that. We're confident. Things like that will contribute to our good mental health. And in our ability to cope with stress, I'd say this is probably one of the biggest ones. If we have ability to cope with stress that's happening in our life, and we have those resources that we're using, that ability to cope with stress, really important when we're dealing with our mental health. So if we're not able to deal with stress effectively, we're probably not going to have as good of mental health as we could have if we are dealing with that effectively. And then the last one is enjoying life. So being able to, not take life too seriously, have a good balance of dealing with stress and then enjoying life at the same time. Anything to add to that on mental health, Jess?
Important to remember that it doesn't mean you're never going to have a bad day. It doesn't mean you're never going to cry. It doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen. It's how you choose to perceive them and how you choose to work through them. So truthfully, like asking for help, accessing resources really works to build that resiliency, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But I think it's important to acknowledge that it's okay not to be okay once in a while.
Absolutely. Right. Alrighty, so the next slide here is all about mental fitness in terms of, mental fitness versus mental illness. So if you see here at the top, it says positive mental health, and then at the bottom is poor mental health. And then on the left and right is illness, so if you have an illness or not. So essentially this graphic is showing that you can live a very healthy life if you have an illness, If you have a diagnosed illness, you can still live a very healthy and happy life with that and be able to maintain that. Just the same on the other side is you can have poor mental health and not have a diagnosed illness. If you're not dealing with stress effectively or not knowing what resources to access, and we'll talk about the mental health continuum in a minute, but that can also play a role. So really where we want to be is have that positive mental health regardless of illness or not, right? And all our experiences that play into that are really important. So how we kind of go about those experiences, those negative experiences, and that outlook on life.
In the chat, how many people have seen this before? I'm going to guess most people will say, yeah, I've seen it. So just a Y or an N if you've seen it. If you haven't, Jessica has, Jackie, yes.
Likely if you're a serving member.
Many times, variations. Yeah, so especially if you've served or if you're currently serving, you've probably seen this. It's been around for at least, I think, 10 years now, I would bet. And it was probably one of the better tools that were really developed to help us explain kind of that mental fitness piece of things. So when I talk through this relatively quickly, because we could spend a lot of time talking about the mental fitness continuum model, I want you to think of it in terms of recognizing things within yourselves, but maybe even using them as a tool to recognize that something's going on with the people around you. Oftentimes we don't tend to use this tool for that piece of things. And also sometimes it's harder to see within ourselves how we're behaving or outwardly responding or reacting to certain situations. So if you look at this continuum, you have 4 different categories. You have healthy, reacting, injured, and ill. The one thing about this particular image that's a little bit different than some of the other ones is that it's very green, yellow, orange, red. But it's really important to note that you can kind of blur within each of those 4 components. So it doesn't have to be strictly one or the other. It can kind of be a mix of the 2. You'll also notice that green is labeled healthy, yellow is labeled reacting, orange is injured, and red is ill. And some arrows underneath that. My favorite arrow is the longest one, which goes actually in both directions. So what that means is that, you can start out perfectly healthy. Maybe something will happen. We'll give you a couple examples in a minute. You might move down that continuum to reacting, injured, and even potentially ill, depending on your perception and how important that situation is to you and how it affected you. But the arrow also goes in the other direction. So if you access resources, if you do what you need to do to try to get that mental fitness kind of back to where it should be, it's very, I shouldn't say very easy, because the farther you are down that continuum, the more difficult and challenging it might be, but it's absolutely possible to move back to that green phase. So that's really important to keep in mind. It's not a one-way street. It's not if you get to that ill phase that you're stuck there or will stay there. You can move back and forth within that continuum. Now, another important fact to really note is that I'm sure all of us have been somewhere in this continuum, besides just healthy, at some time. Some of us currently might even be in reacting. COVID-19 has been a very stressful time for everyone. Some people are reacting to it a lot differently than others, but I think it's definitely affecting a lot of our mental fitness, and we've had to challenge ourselves in new and sometimes very creative ways to keep our mental fitness healthy, right? So if we look, let's start with that, the healthy phase. Some different adjectives there that are going to describe what healthy might feel like for someone, okay? Or some of the behaviors you might notice if someone is healthy. Typically, something will happen in someone's life to cause them to react, okay? So maybe that is some more stress at work, maybe it's extra projects, maybe it's finances, maybe it's a loss of a friend or something like that. But typically something will happen and you will react to it, and that will tend to move you down the continuum, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to be a big thing, but even some small things people can start reacting to. I know sometimes I've been at work or up in my office working, and I will feel kind of tired out or burnt out or maybe starting to get a little bit more irritable with people and just not really wanting to be motivated or be here, right? That doesn't necessarily mean a big thing happened in my life. It just means that maybe I'm reacting to a bunch of small things. So I think that's important to remember too. It doesn't always have to be a big thing. It's about your perception and how things can sometimes pile up that can cause you to react to situations, right? On the flip side as well, if you're noticing some of these behaviors in someone else, maybe something's going on. Maybe they are a little stressed as well. And it might be good to just do a bit of a check-in. Let's say some stuff was happening in my life and I'm starting to react to it a little bit. And I just keep taking more on. So I keep saying yes to things I really want to say no to. This whole isolation COVID thing still going on. And as time passes, I start to feel a little bit more maybe stressed, a little bit more tired, more irritable. Maybe I'm withdrawing from people. I could easily start moving into that injured phase. Okay, where you're going to see a lot more serious kind of behavioral issues and serious, more of those mental health pieces starting to come out of it. Okay, if I kind of let that go still and things keep happening, I could have the potential to move into that ill phase. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will, but it's really important to kind of check in with yourself and take note of where you're at, and try to figure out what it is that could be causing you to move through that continuum. Now, keep in mind, with mental fitness or even stress, it all has to do with perception. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit as well, but we all handle things differently. And your stress levels really coincide with what is important to you, right? So as an example, let's say, you know, pets are important to me and I lose a pet. I could be out for a week. Okay, that could really affect my mental health to maybe some people who aren't pet people. And they might simply say, you know what, it was just a pet, get another pet, right? So perception is really, really important. And just because it doesn't necessarily matter to you doesn't mean it doesn't matter to someone else. So really taking note of that, if someone's talking to you about those things, it's important because that could help you kind of figure out why they're reacting to certain situations the way that they are. Oftentimes when we look at this, it's much easier to picture, let's say, a physical injury. So let's say I'm a soccer player and I'm perfectly healthy and I'm out on the field, let's say post-COVID, and I pull a muscle. Okay, so let's kind of put that in with reacting. It's going to take me maybe a few days of rest, not pushing too hard, taking care of myself, and I'm going to be back to healthy fairly quickly. Okay, let's say I sprain my ankle. Okay, I'm looking at probably 6 weeks. I might have to go for an x-ray. I'm going to have to probably be on crutches, do some physio exercises to help get me back to that healthy phase. It's going to take a little longer. I'm going to need to access some more resources, but I can definitely get back to healthy, right? Let's say I broke my leg, okay? And we'll kind of equate that with that ill phase. It's definitely going to take me longer, and I'm going to need quite a bit of help to get back to healthy, right? And it's important to acknowledge that. I'm probably going to need a cast. I'm going to need physio. I'm going to need a bunch of different things to help me get back to where I was before. But it's absolutely possible if those resources are accessed, okay? For a lot of us, we have no issues accessing resources for those physical challenges, but it's those mental challenges that we try. I shouldn't blanket statement this, but a lot of us tend to avoid recognizing, and we're sometimes late getting help. So using this tool can help with that. It can help you recognize things within yourselves and others. So hopefully the sooner you access the resources, the quicker you'll get back into that green. Are there any questions on that? Okay, let's go to the slide. Braden, did you have anything to throw in there?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, just with the, you know, it's about identifying changes in yourself, but also in others. So what might be green for you might be not green for someone else, or what's injured for you might be different for someone else. It's all about recognizing those changes in yourself or those changes in other people. So if I know I have a coworker who is always happy, always, you know, a certain way, and I notice now they're coming to work maybe a little different, looking more tired, maybe looking like distraught or stressed of some kind, that's a change in someone that I should be having a conversation with them or addressing that in myself if that's something that I'm seeing in myself. So it's all about those changes. I often give the example of my dad. who can, be very productive at maybe 4 hours sleep. I don't know how, I don't know why, but as opposed to me who needs the full 9 hours of sleep to be even slightly productive. So his normal or his healthy per se would be that 4 hours of sleep. But to me, he could be in the injured or ill. So identifying those and then seeing the changes that are happening in someone, really important for the mental health continuum.
Let's talk about more generalized positive mental health for all ages. So we have a couple slides to take you through on that. And it's just some tips and tools that you can kind of start putting into your life now to help with that mental fitness piece and to keep you a little bit more resilient. Let's go to the next slide, Braden. So resilience, and again, we talked about it earlier, it doesn't mean you're never going to have a bad day. It doesn't mean you're never going to cry. It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that you're going to take your experiences and hopefully grow from them and come back a little bit stronger and able to tackle things. The thing about your mental fitness is that a lot of people think it just means pushing through. A lot of people don't necessarily do those preventative measures to help with their mental fitness in case something should happen. And typically it will at some point. I don't think all of us escape life without some struggles and challenges. So making sure that you're kind of prepared for that stuff is important as well. So if you take the first point here, so your sleep, nutrition, stress, and avoid addictive substances to manage stress and also your physical activity, that's a lot of those preventative things that you can start doing that will make a huge difference for your mental fitness and your resiliency. Braden just quickly talked about sleep. I am also an 8 to 9 hour sleeper. If I don't, I can function, but I'm not as happy. I'm definitely a little more irritable. I'm probably not that much fun to be around. Sleep is a big one, and making sure that you're getting the sleep and protecting that sleep. And what I mean by that is having your cell phones on silent, not watching TV or bringing screens into the bedroom, trying to shut down things a little bit early. It is really important because sleep is when your body kind of regenerates. It's when it rebuilds, and you need that. It will definitely make a difference with your mental fitness. And I know some of you that are listening can probably attest to the fact that maybe you're grumpy ogres if you don't get enough sleep. I know I am for sure. So sleep is a big one, and it's one that you can easily kind of use as that preventative measure to help with that mental fitness. Nutrition. That's a huge one. I know we've all heard it. You are what you eat. And it's true. We need to really make some healthier choices. And what I mean by that is balance, right? So we are not the type of organization who believes in never having some of the foods that you like, but it all has to be in balance. So if you are a chocolate fanatic and you want some of the chocolate sometimes, then that's fine. But making sure you're taking all of those fruits, veggies, whole grains, and those proteins off the list in healthier ways versus getting in ways that aren't necessarily your best options all the time. Also, with nutrition, making sure that you're eating small amounts quite often is important too to keep your energy levels high. It helps with your mood. It helps with any type of physical activity that you're doing. Nutrition plays a huge role in your mental fitness. Carbohydrates, and Braden, I promise I won't spend too much time talking about.
It's turning into a nutrition.
I know, but I love them, and I love them for a lot of reasons. And for those of you that also love them, you know they change your mood, right? Carbohydrate is a great energy source, as long as they're healthy carbohydrates, of course. And they're one of the only fuel sources that your brain uses. So if you're doing things like cutting carbohydrates from your diet, you have the potential of feeling tired, not being able to focus, being quite irritable and cranky as well, and not necessarily conducive to your mental fitness. So keep in mind, you want a balanced diet with lots of nutrient-dense type foods. Manage stress. Ooh, that one's really broad. We have full 2-day courses on just that topic, so I'm not going to spend too much time going through it. But with managing your stress, I think it's really important to recognize that you're stressed. And oftentimes we don't. And I'll speak for myself, people around me tend to recognize my stress levels before I do. And I don't know if that rings true for some of you out there as well. But trying to manage your stress, manage your time, okay, time management skills, not saying yes all the time when you really want to say no, making sure that you have your priorities in check. And what I mean by that is if your priorities, for example, are your kids and spending time with them and you're always at work, you're going to feel stressed. Okay, if you have stuff to do at work and you're busy doing home stuff or whatever it is, you're probably going to feel stressed too. So it's important to find that balance. Avoid addictive substances to manage stress. Oftentimes we tend to turn towards those things to help us cope or escape when we are stressed. Keeping in mind it doesn't really work that way. It can actually a lot of the times make things a little bit worse. So you want to try to avoid using those things to manage your stress. And my favorite, physical activity. I do love sleep and food, don't get me wrong, but I do love physical activity as well. And I think when it comes to building resilience, it does a lot to help you manage your stress levels. Okay, it actually helps your body practice using those hormones and getting them through so that you can more efficiently manage your stress. So physical activity is important. We're going to be talking a lot about that next week with our webinar. So stay tuned on that. And I'm not going to talk about it too much today, Braden, I promise. But with physical activity, the one thing I want to emphasize is it doesn't mean you have to put on gym clothes and go for a long run or a huge workout. It just means keep moving. So try not to sit too much, go for some walks, play with your kids, take every opportunity possible to just move. And that will make a huge difference in terms of building your resilience.
I think you kind of hit on a good point there, Jess, of, finding what works for you. It's not always going to be the same for all of us. We have kind of points to hit on here with, we need a certain amount of sleep to be functional. We need to eat those, Canada Food Guide recommended foods and how to do it. We need to manage our stress. But how we do that is kind of going to be individual to you. So take the time to really kind of trial and error some things, maybe you're not someone who likes to go to the gym and work out with the weights or whatever, go for a run, but maybe being active in different ways or managing stress. I know, the evidence says to go and maybe do yoga or go and do mindfulness, but that might not work for some people. It might actually add stress to you. So really kind of trial and erroring what works for you and how to actually take care of yourself for you is really important, I think, here as well.
I know we've done like in-person stress classes before where we added in like a yoga class for 30 minutes. And when we announced it to the participants, half of them looked scared and stressed. Mm-hmm. So it actually did quite the opposite of what we were hoping it would do.
Right? I have a friend who we went to a spa once, and we were there probably 20 minutes, and she like needed to leave. She hated the quietness, like the whole atmosphere. It just wasn't for her. It stressed her out so much we left because it was so bad. But yeah, kind of a unique experience of trial and error with what works for you.
Yeah. Okay, so in keeping going, learning to adapt to change as it comes. Change is something we can't avoid. Truthfully, nothing stays the same for long, and I think we know this. And a lot of us, myself being a big one, tend to drag their heels with change. Through the years that it's going to come no matter whether I want it to or not, depending on what it looks like, of course, is that try to find the positive aspects of that change and really try to focus on those versus always turning towards the negatives. Stay connected, maintain a strong, positive social network. Those social networks are key in terms of building resilience in your mental fitness. Having people there that can understand your situation, people that you can turn to and talk to is really, really important. So making sure that you're staying connected socially, whether it's a group of friends you've known forever, even if it's your family, or let's say you're new to the area or area and you're not really sure who to hang out with, where to go, just finding some groups that you're interested in. So whether maybe it's a running group or a craft group or something like that, to build those social support networks is really important with resilience. You guys are already doing this one because you're here this morning. So learn more about mental illness and mental fitness. So knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the better able you are to understand certain situations, and that definitely contributes to your resilience. Improve self-esteem and confidence when dealing with conflict. Conflict can be super tricky for some people. People like to avoid it. Some people seek it out. But really, when you have experience with it, when you effectively deal with conflict, so in terms of just even learning about it through courses or anything like that, it will help build that self-esteem and confidence, which means that when you are in those situations, stress will be less. Be open to learning or relearning new skills and putting those into practice. That's important too. And the last one, I think, is probably one of the most important points on this slide, is don't be scared to ask for help. That seems to be the hardest one for most of us to do, is to acknowledge that, you're not doing okay, you just need some time, or whatever help might look like for you. Maybe it's reaching out, talking to a social worker or a therapist or any of those types of things. But asking for help can stop you from moving quickly down that continuum, which is what you want. If you can get help right away, if you feel like you are moving through that continuum, okay, you're going to be quicker to move back to that green, which is important. So there are tons of resources out there, and throughout the rest of this presentation, we're going to be taking you through a lot of them. For those of you that are on our social media, we have this sheet actually posted, and we can repost it again at some point. But these are just some apps that are available and that are out there that you can get on your phone that are quick, easy use to help you with some of the relaxation, the mindfulness, the breathing, but also to give you more information on what's available. Right? So you'll notice on this sheet in particular, the ones that are bilingual, we've kind of identified those with French beside them. So again, you can get these on your smartphone, they're easy to use, and they are free.
I think for a lot of people, Jess, it's kind of we know we should be doing something for our mental health, or if we're feeling stressed, how do we cope with that? But we don't really know where to start. So I was feeling that way a lot in university of, I know I'm stressed. I can identify that I'm feeling stressed, but what do I do with that? How do I help myself in that situation? And I think a good first step is kind of exploring our options in terms of, calming techniques or resources available to us. So these are a list of some of them. I use the one quite actively actually called Stop, Think, Breathe. Where, I didn't really know how to do mindfulness or meditation before this app per se. And it kind of guides you through the learning process. So, trying something new and experiencing that, I think, is really important to then decide if it's a useful coping mechanism for you in the future, so that you have those resources available to you when you're at your best. So then when you are kind of stressed out or feeling like you're going down that continuum, you have these smaller resources available to kind of help you calm you down or cope with certain things in your life. So I think a great resources and great tool to kind of identify or explore different options for you. I know, the Stop, Think, Breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it for those who haven't used it, you kind of press how you are physically that day, how you are mentally, and then it has this huge long list of different options for how you're feeling. So if I'm irritable, or if I'm grumpy, or if I'm tired, you can click up to 5, I think, and then it shoots out just this huge long list of you can do a 30-second meditation, or you can do a 10-minute meditation walk or mindfulness walk. There's so many options to do just from those. And they do change when you choose different emotions. So I love that. Good. I highly recommend it. And it's free. So anything else to add to that section, Jess, before we move on? Okay. So now we're going to be kind of exploring considerations for varying ages. So Jess took us through some general kind of things that we all need to do. So we all need to think of our sleep from young child to older adult. We all need to think of our nutrition. We all need to, have those skills to manage our stress, physical activity. All of these things are really important for us throughout our life. So we didn't want to downplay that in any sense. But now we'll be taking you through some kind of common stressors for different ages. And then we'll be talking about kind of some ways to nurture or promote positive health in that age group. And then we'll be showing some resources that are available to us, whether it's through the CAF community or just externally, some that we found that we use or that we find really good to help you or guide you or help or guide someone else in your life through mental health for that age group. So I'm going to start by talking about children and teens. To kind of gauge how long I should spend on this, can anyone who has tell me in the chat if you have a child in your life or a teen, or if you're a child or teen, shouldn't be here, but maybe kind of, I want to get a sense of how many people are interacting with children now or teens. Hopefully everyone's awake now. Okay, so no one interacts with children's routines. I feel like that's probably not true, but okay, nephews.
It's the nephews.
Even I have a sister who's 15, 14, so she would be in this category. All right, so I won't spend too much time on this. But really, if you're a parent or an aunt or an uncle or something, a grandma, a grandpa, you'll be interacting with children and teens, and it's really important to kind of address that they have mental health concerns as well, or they have their own mental health, right? We all have a mental health that we need to consider. So really important here, I think oftentimes we turn to the fact that, oh, they're just a child. The fact that they lost their favorite toy isn't a big deal. But like Jess mentioned earlier, what stresses me out is going to be different than what stresses other people out. So it's really important not to downplay certain considerations or issues or stressors in a child's life. Very, very important to realize that that's an issue in their life. They're identifying that as a stressor. So some common stressors in children and teen would be home life stressors. So what's going on in their home, what's going on around them. A common one in a military context would be changing schools or geographic locations. So that puts a lot of strain on a child if not dealt with the right way or not communicated in the right way. Making friends or building relationships is another huge stressor in a child's life. Body changes and puberty and everything that's going on during that time in a child's life. There's a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainties that they might feel stressed about. And then that school and social interaction plays a huge part, that peer pressure aspect, maybe turning to substance use or those negative coping strategies. If they're feeling stressed and don't know how to deal with it, they might be turning to those as well. Actually, just a sec. So what we can do as a parent or a role model in a child's life is really promote good mental health in the things you do and how you're interacting with them, and also identify those early signs in a child. So just like the mental health continuum, we can use that for children and teens and help us to identify if there's changes in our child or in a child around us that we need to kind of talk to them about it. So just like adults, there is 1 in 5 children will have a diagnosable mental health condition in their life. And there's a lot of risks associated with that, right? So a lot of stressors or potential things that can cause that. So for a child and teen, I think it's really important to kind of stick to these points. If you're a parent or a guardian or someone who's interacting with children, really important to talk about mental health and actually identify it and reduce that stigma around it, right? So we want to be openly and willing to talk about mental health and any answers or any questions the children has to answer those as best we can. As well, listen to our instincts. So any changes that we're seeing, act on those, not just kind of push them under the rug. Teach and role model resiliency. So the child is looking to us for those skills, for that knowledge, looking at what we're doing. Maybe if we're using positive coping strategies, they'll learn those skills as well. So really role modeling the positive mental health behaviors that you want them to kind of take on. And then also active listening. So really with any age group, we should be active listening, listening to what their stressors are, not belittling those in any way, maybe, asking how or why, kind of exploring options for positive coping strategies or positive ways of dealing with that stress instead of just telling them. And then encouraging those healthy habits. So role modeling those nutrition, those sleep behaviors, physical activity, all of these things to help them to build that resiliency in their life. And then acknowledging that they might need help from time to time. So reach out if you think they need help, have those conversations. Really, really important. A few things I kind of explored this morning and yesterday around children and mental health. Their brain is just learning so much in a short period of time that we really need to show that executive functioning and those mental skills for mental health. So if we're talking about memory, self-control, flexible thinking, all these things, we want to challenge that a bit if we're the adult. So, establishing routines for our mental health, making them know that, we don't have to be perfect, having supportive relationships in their life. So making sure they know that they're loved, that kind of thing. Having creative play. So having them learn different things and skills to kind of guide them into resiliency skills down the line is really, really important as well. All right. And then last section here is just for children and teens, is just some resources for you if you want more information. So some CAF resources for children and teens. We have the MFRC or BFRC, as we call it in Borden, or the family information line that is available for children to access. And then externally, we have, the kids' help phone where they can actually call, text, live chat in any way, whatever they're comfortable with. So meeting them and talking to them about mental health that way. As well, they do learn about resiliency skills in the curriculum through school. So the PHE teaches resiliency, but you can also access that resource and kind of add on to that and how that can play a role. And then the top two are kind of around resources for you as a parent or you as a guardian around acknowledging, if I have a child who is very worried about something, how do I deal with that or how do I address that? So I think it's the first one there that will actually take you through, my child is anxious or my child is sad because of this. And it'll give you a list of kind of ways you can help them through that. But yeah, resources available for you for children. Over to you.
What we're looking at is between the ages of usually 18, 24, maybe a little bit older. And this is the time in people's lives, and I'm sure we remember it, or maybe some of us are going through it right now, when there was a lot of changes. You were out on your own for the first time, financial issues, education, what do I want to do with my life? Maybe it's new relationships, maybe it's serious relationships. All of those things can really add a lot of stress to someone's life, especially if they start feeling like they're losing any of those things. So let's say they choose a career and it doesn't work out, or let's say, it's their first or your first serious relationship and that doesn't work out, and you're adding in some feelings of loss with very stressful situations. That can really challenge someone's mental health and mental fitness. So it's really important to acknowledge that. And I know for a lot of us, we look back and we think, wow, I had it easy then compared to now. Or it's easy for us to, again, kind of think what's going on in our lives now might be a little more difficult than how easy we had it then. But it is about perception. So remember that is very individual to everyone, and that the things that are on this list can be extremely challenging for anyone. Okay, there is a lot of change that goes on for someone between the ages of 18 to 24, 18 to 25. And if we think about it and we think about the CAF, that makes up a good percentage of the people that we work with and that are around us. So even if these things aren't affecting you right now, acknowledging that they can be affecting those people around you is important too. So in order to nurture those positive mental health things is you want to really acknowledge change and learn to adapt different health mechanisms to help cope with that. So again, your sleep, nutrition, physical activity, not using addictive substances to help you cope with stress. And for a lot of this population, they tend to not necessarily use them to cope with stress, but they're definitely potentially using them more for partying and celebrations and those types of things. So acknowledging that within themselves, and for you watching it to know that and acknowledge it, that could be a potential inhibitor for a strong mental fitness too. Continue to build on existing resiliency skills. So if you know someone or you are kind of in this demographic, making sure that, you know, as an example, if yoga works for you, plan it into your day, making sure you're taking time for that self-care and find ways to help you de-stress. Build social networks in new spaces. So for some of the potential people in this demographic, especially if they're in the CAF, there's probably going to be a lot of moving around. So making sure that you are holding on to those old social networks and working on those, but also building new ones to help support you in the location that you're at is very important. Find new coping strategies, maybe try something different, see if it works for you. So some of those apps as an example that Braden was talking about. And again, reach out if you need help, because that's really what's important so that you prevent moving down that continuum. So when we talk about reaching out for help, Braden, hit the next slide. There are a lot of different resources that are available. So again, you're going to have the MFRC, easy website to find information on that would be our CAF Connection site. And again, that's also true for most of CFMWS as well. So if you're interested in fitness programming, health promotion, community recreation, the MFRC, CISUP, CANX, all of it is on that CAF Connections website. So just keep that in mind. CIFMAP, so the Canadian Forces Members Assistance Program. So this is a 24/7 helpline. It's similar to EAP that they can offer counseling online as well as on the phone, as well as if you want to take it kind of off base, they are able to set you up with someone who is not connected to that military environment for short-term counseling. So keep that in mind. CAMH, another great resource, and tips for mental health are on there as well. So there's lots of different websites. And I think I've got my mic button kind of covering that. There we go. The family information line, again, another 24/7 resource that someone can call. But one of the resources I want to hit on, and Braden and I were actually just talking about it before this presentation, is Connects Ontario. So if you're wondering what's out there, especially if it's a little bit away from that military community, this would be a great website to go to, and they can help get you to the exact right resource that you need. Okay, so as an example, Braden was, you know, I should actually just let Braden jump in, Braden.
Sure. So I actually use this resource. I've been promoting it for, it's relatively new, so a couple, maybe a year old or so, I believe. And I used it actually a couple of weeks ago for a friend who reached out to me needing resources in his life. And I went on this website. I didn't know much about it, to be honest. Accessed it, went into the live chat, or you can phone in, and you tell the individual, the person who you're speaking with, where your location is, what's kind of going on, what resources are available, and she really like guided me through what to tell my friend, what resources I should kind of explore with him, and really was an advocate for me on exploring that, and kind of pushed me to do things that maybe I didn't know about. So great resource. I'm a full-on advocate for Connects Ontario now that I've used it firsthand and see the benefit of it. Yeah. Probably similar things, not like in BC or wherever you are, Alberta. Probably similar resources available to you, I'm sure. If you want more information on that, we can always contact our other HP departments, or you can to kind of get a better sense of what's in your geographic location. So.
Keeping that in mind too, the CAF Connection website is one easy website to get you in touch with your local HP offices. So if you do want a whole list of resources for your geographical area, they can help you with that. Reach out to CAF Connections. All of their info would be there.
Perfect. Alrighty, so now we've moved on to midlife. A common age group, I would say, in the CAF demographic as well. We've kind of moved from young adult. We've kind of established maybe a better working, we've moved up in rank maybe, or we've changed roles, more of a leadership position perhaps. Maybe now we have children, or our children are growing up. Maybe we have changed careers, maybe released from the CAF and moved on with something else. Maybe we've had loss of a loved one, maybe a family member, a parent has passed away. And of course, always those finances play a huge role in our stress, really among any age. So always going to be there as well. So really here, really important to do everything we've already kind of established, that idea of, we learn something about mental health from our young age. So as children or as young adults, really should be moving into our midlife as well. So everything we've already learned, building on that. So that growth mindset perspective of always kind of challenging ourselves and challenging ourselves to learn new ways to cope, very important throughout any age. So really here, oh, my thingy's covering it. What's the first one say? Social network, I'm sure. Oh, we're almost out of time. So social network, really important. Don't forget about self-care. So I know a lot of people in this age group are focusing more on their kids or helping other people in their lives, but making sure you're taking time for yourself and coping with the stress in your life. Continuing to develop those healthy habits. Try something new. So with trying something new, really important for our cognitive functioning. So it actually, by doing something new or challenging our brain a little bit, it's actually promoting that positive mental health. And kind of don't be afraid of aging. So often if we're afraid of something, we steer away from it. But we really need to kind of start learning here and about the aging process. What can we do for maybe our nutrition or physical activity as we age? So this age group is all about learning. As well, reach out if you need any help. And here are just some resources, not many new ones from what we've said before. There is a ton of resources when releasing from the CAF, literally tons on CAF Connection if you need that. As well, Connex Ontario is still a great resource, CAMH, so many resources available. All right, quickly through this one, sorry. Oh no!
We won't spend too much time on this, but when we're looking at the older adult, we have to recognize that there's definitely some unique stressors that comes with that period of our lives. So again, we already talked about release from military or retirement and what that could look like, bereavement. So there's a good chance you're going to be experiencing maybe more grief and losing those close to you. Physical changes to your body and your functional abilities, it's going to change as we get older, and it's important to acknowledge that that could cause a lot of stress for you and those around you. As we get older too, we tend to be a little bit more isolated, and it can be more challenging to get out there to do things. Maybe it is due to some physical changes, but to acknowledge the fact that it can be quite lonely for some people in that stage of their life is important. Chronic pain or underlying health issues, more stuff has the potential to arise as you age. And again, reduced mobility is definitely going to be a consideration with your mental fitness and your mental health as well. So on the next slide, it talks about nurturing that. So just some tips and tools to help with making sure that you're doing what you can during that stage of life to maintain that mental fitness. So being active, keeping and maintaining your social contacts, find a new sense of purpose. Maybe it's volunteering, maybe you find a part-time job, join a club, something like that to keep those skills kind of fresh and that social support network out there. Maybe it's renewing your interests, so hobbies, different things like that. Again, big advocate, those coping strategies, so sleep, nutrition, physical activity, not using addictive substances to help you cope, those types of things. So adding some of those in or maintaining them is important, and stay on top of your health. So making sure that you're going to your appointments, you're getting the information that you need, and you're taking care of you. So when we talk about resources for this population, I'm not going to spend too much time going into them. We've gone over a few of them already. A couple new ones you're going to see on there is from the World Health Organization. So there's some links. Even if you were to do a quick Google search on the World Health Organization, you can quickly kind of navigate through and find the information that you're looking for. But again, some great resources to help if you do have someone who is aging or the older population in your life, or if you happen to be in that demographic as well. Next slide, Brandon. So next week, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to use the same type of format. So we're going to hit on some general physical activity throughout your life. We're going to talk about different types of workouts, different types of activity, why it's all important, and things in particular you need to consider as you're going through your lifetime. So if you're, the child, teen, midlife, into the aging adult as well. You'll see Braden just popped up a link. So if you click that, it will take you to next week's session. So it's an easy register. And you'll get that reminder in your email that hopefully most of you got today. We're looking at between 9 and 10 next week. And this is the one or our last presentation in this series to kind of wrap up the throughout your life type webinar series. So different resources in general, and again, we have talked so much about resources. Hopefully you were able to get the information that you need, but we have some resources based off of what we talked about today at the top, and also just some general resources, everything from Kids Help Phone to the Members Assistance Program. The most important thing here to remember is that if you are experiencing difficulties, if you are struggling even a little bit, if you're noticing some of those things come up with that mental health continuum model and you're recognizing it, don't be scared to reach out. Okay. Sometimes it's harder and it takes someone who's super strong to reach out and ask for help. And it's those types of behaviors that will prevent you from moving through that continuum model and get you back into that greener, healthy phase quickly. If you do have any questions for us or you do want more information, Braden, through our email address, so bordenhealthpromotion@gmail.com. Please feel free to email us. We can help direct you in the right direction. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, so if you wanted to send us a direct message, we can respond to that as well. But yeah, are there any other questions that have come up?
Looks like a few people had to leave, so only a few people.
It's true. We're a couple minutes over.
Always. I feel like I always go over.
If there's no other questions and everyone's good, we hope you have a great day, and we hope to see you out next week.
Thanks for joining. All right. Have a good day. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.
Braden, is that bird at your place?
Yeah, probably. Could you hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Sorry.
All right, I think it's just us. That one's at my place.
Yep, that one's not here.
Yeah, anything else would be good?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Sorry for going over time. I really thought we were going to go under.
I know. It was
No.
all good. Lots of info. So let's touch base later about the physical activity one.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, talk soon.
All right, bye.
See you, Braden.